everybody, good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, where we will be talking about financial planning and AI. We've decided to call this webinar Make Shift Happen, because it's all about making positive changes in all of your businesses, but also for the profession as a whole. I'm Ben Wright, Chief Innovation Officer and founder at Melo, and I will be your host for today. Now, today is all about practical wins. We want everyone to come away from today with some stuff that they can implement into their business to really start to move things forward. We want to use our real world experience at Melo and also the real world experience of an AI provider in Saturn to talk about how we can make a positive difference to client experiences and businesses. So we'll be talking about some of the do's, some of the don'ts, some of the common challenges, and some of the uses of AI where we've really seen it being incredibly positive and successful in firms. Now, I'm joined today by two incredible guests. First up, we have Tom Hind from Saturn. Tom, do you want to do us a little intro?
Love to, Ben. Love the title as well, Making Shift Happen. So you've got to be cautious with that one, I think. But yeah, really excited to be here. Thank you very much to Melo, to yourself, to Kath, to the team to kind of set the webinar up and to give us the space to have a good old chat with both of you about AI and kind of things that we're seeing in the industry. My name is Tom. I'm head of partnerships at Saturn. My job ultimately is working with the 600 advice firms around the country that have implemented Saturn in various shapes and sizes into their business. I was the first employee through the door, so I've seen us grow from kind of very much early stage tech startup, laptops on knees kind of vibe to kind of where we are today, which is the leading provider of AI solutions in the financial advice space. So, for those that haven't heard of Saturn, we are incredibly passionate about the power of human-focused financial advice. We fundamentally believe that there is too much human work that goes into delivering very mundane manual processes in advice businesses. And that's the stuff that AI ultimately can be very impactful at. So all of the stuff that we're building and developing is tackling those manual processes that people have to do to enable advice to be scalable. And the two things we're doing to tackle that is one, on the cost to serve, and two, on the time to serve, which I'm sure we'll come back to today.
Thank you, Tom. I love the idea about technology helping advice become more personal, and I would love to come back on that shortly. But before, Kath, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Ben. So I am Kath Harvey, and I am head of progress at Melo. And I've been with Melo since we started early last year. And what I do is I go into businesses and look at the operational and strategic situations in businesses. So we work with a lot of businesses across the UK, so we see it all. And we come across challenges at board level and at implementation level all the time.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I'd like to bring from today is that we've seen so many different businesses and how they're going about dealing with technology. So we can hopefully bring some of that knowledge and expertise to the group. Because whilst every business is special and unique, we do find that businesses have similar problems and similar opportunities. So it may be that whilst we're not talking about your business specifically, you may well benefit from hearing about what somebody else is doing. Now, before we jump into the questions, a quick bit of housekeeping. We are recording today's session. You'll get an email later today with a link to the recording. Please do feel free to share it with anyone who you would think would benefit from watching it. And secondly, we want this to be as interactive as possible. So please do get involved. You can submit questions using the Q&A function. You can do that with a name or anonymously if you're a little bit shy, perhaps. You can also upvote the questions that you'd like to get answered. Positively, we had some great questions sent in before the session, so I will be slotting those in as and when as we go through. If you hit any technical difficulties, just drop us a note in the chat and we will try and solve that. Lastly, we are going to be sharing our personal experiences and opinions today. Every financial planning firm is different, and what works for some may not work for everybody. If you want specific advice about your business, just drop your contact details into the feedback form at the end of this webinar or email hello@melo.co.uk and we can go from there. Okay, with that out of the way, I think what would be really handy, Tom, is just to set the scene. What even is AI and how does it work?
Big questions. I love starting the webinar with a disclosure on Kath and I's opinions as well. That's always sets us up for a good point. Just to be really cautious, Tom and Kath are going to share opinions today, so be aware of that. Yeah, so what is AI? I mean, ultimately for me, it's about the ability for technology to start thinking. And that's quite a big statement. I think, we've gone through multiple evolutions in the software space. And my background's on the financial planning side, but have been kind of in and around the tech space now for the last few years, where technology has moved from a very linear position to being able to think very laterally. So we start to position software as going through ultimately three different phases. So phase one we'll call software 1.0, very much rules and controls based. If thinking the kind of ones and zeros, for example, if you tell a computer to do this, it will do exactly that. Every instruction, every rule, if this, then that. Very, very binary outcomes. Very, very easy to control. Super predictable, very safe, but really rigid. There's nothing happening unless we kind of explicitly tell software what to do. Software 2.0 is this move into kind of starting to look at data sets and how we can start to use predictable models, still very much kind of in the parameters of the scope that a human being will give it, but it has a slightly more bandwidth, I suppose, to start thinking slightly differently. So for us there, it's like kind of teaching a kind of very junior employee to do something where you give it hundreds and hundreds of examples of data and it starts to think about what it could potentially do with that information. So it works quite well, but it doesn't really have the ability to access huge data sets and to be able to train itself. That's where software 3.0, where kind of AI starts to come in. And this starts to be about understanding through language. So for us, we're in this age of software 3.0, where artificial intelligence is prominent across literally everything that we're doing right now. And the way that it works is by training what we call large language models on huge data sets. So a language model is the ability to us to feed data using language prompts, and then using those language prompts to train on that data to think laterally. AI is moving in a direction where it's starting to get towards what we call superhuman intelligence. And that is the big thing that people in the AI world are working towards. People might have heard of artificial general intelligence, which is the ability to AI to think at the level of a human being. Superhuman intelligence is where it can think beyond the capacities of what we think is imaginable. Just to caveat that, I think we're quite a long way away from that because that sounds probably quite scary and daunting, but that is the journey that we're on. How can we enable technology to think in new and different and creative ways that maybe we haven't considered previously?
Thanks, Tom. I think that's a really important point there. In fact, at the moment, our AI is quite specific. So it can transcribe a meeting, but that particular AI can just transcribe a meeting. It can't give us directions to somewhere. But your Google Maps can tell you where to go, but it can't transcribe a meeting. So it feels like AI is quite linear at the moment, and we haven't quite got to that broader space as of yet. Although, certainly in my own experiences with GPT, it's coming on very, very rapidly. What's the newest stuff in this space?
I think you're touching on a really important point there, Ben, actually, which is kind of, for me, like the ultimate crux of technology innovation at the moment is like this move away from point solutions. Like if you think about the way that like tech has always worked, you use the example of Google Maps there, like a specific piece of technology, fairly algorithmic, it's been trained to do a certain thing and give you a certain output. Like where ChatGPT is at the moment, and if people have used ChatGPT 5 thinking mode, you'll be able to see that it thinks very laterally around huge data sets and provides a lot more context. This is where we move away from point solutions to systems that can think across entire industries and ecosystems. So that's what we're starting to see at the moment. I mean, automation is a big thing that's coming in the AI space. The things for us to train an AI system and for that AI system to go off and work independently of the human being that's taught it to do that piece of work. That's where we start to think about agentic AI. So agentic AI, people might have heard of that previously. You train a specific piece of AI to do a specific job, and it then has the freedom to do that job in the best way that it thinks possible. So an example that I'm seeing a lot of people using at the moment is, if people have heard of a system called Fixer AI, it's an agentic software that enables email automation to be done for you. So the way that that system does is you train a piece of AI to read your emails, sort your inbox out, categorize whether those emails need to be responded to or not, or whether you just need to be aware of them. It then drafts a response for you in your language, and the human can then review it and send it. So agentic AI is a big thing that we're seeing coming into the industry right now and into other industries. Ultimately, what it's enabling us to do is to move away from human beings being, and this is an analogy we'll come back to a lot, human beings being musicians within an orchestra to being the conductor of an agentic orchestra. So rather than us having to do every single thing in the day-to-day life of what we do in our jobs, we can use AI to enable us to have oversight across each of those jobs. And therefore we move from the producers of things to the reviewer of things. And that is going to be a big theme to AI introduction into the financial planning space as well.
You make it sound wonderful, to be honest, Tom. But I think there are some pitfalls to work around as well. It's not all quite as rosy, maybe, as it could be. Kath, but coming across to you. So we work with lots of different firms together across the financial planning profession, and we need to implement AI. Is something which is said all the time to us. What's the kind of common reasons behind it that you find from firms, or how are firms tackling it day to day?
Thanks, Ben. So yeah, what we're finding across the profession, so when we go in to look at firms, we are usually it starts out with a how can we do things better, how can we do things more quickly, how can we do things more efficiently. And what we see is people firms rushing to tech as a solution. They think a lot of firms think that tech is the panacea that's going to fix everything. But what we actually come across time and time again is that we find firms who don't understand the tech that they've already got, for one thing, and they don't understand how it integrates with other tech, and they really don't know where to start, Ben. They're in a situation where they don't know where to start. They're overwhelmed actually by everything in the marketplace, and they're saying, what do we need? We don't know. And so it's that starting point, I think, that's often a blocker to firms. It's like it's too overwhelming. We don't understand the space. How do we start this process, and how do we understand what it is we need as a business is usually the issue going in.
Certainly in my experience, I tend to get, we're going to launch some AI because we think it'll speed things up. But when we ask a few more questions, they haven't actually thought about what they want to speed up, or what the experience needs to be like, or how it needs to be implemented across the business. And in fact, one of the questions that we got sent through before today was, where do most firms actually start with AI? And I think it's fair to say that we're seeing most firms now have some kind of note taker, minute taker for meetings. That seems to be the entry point for a lot of people. Although, in your experience, Kath, are people using that to its full effect, or not really?
I think it's, in my experience, it's being used sporadically. It's often not embedded consistently across firms. So you might have one person trying one bit of tech and another person trying another bit of tech. The thing I'm always saying to people is, the thing that you must remember is that these outputs need to be checked before they go anywhere, because AI is not perfect and it makes mistakes, and sometimes it picks things up incorrectly, or it'll attribute a comment to someone that wasn't them that said it, and those kind of things. So those are the things. It's like any output. If it's your output and it's going out to a client, or you're using it for record keeping, you have to make sure that it's robust and what is being said is actually what has been captured. But yeah, that seems to be a jumping off point for many firms, is how can we capture information better?
And you've just really highlighted an important step there as well for me, is that the sporadic use of it. So certainly I've seen firms have adopted AI. So yeah, we're going to adopt AI. And then you find that 2 out of the 5 advisors are using it. One of them's kind of using it when they remember to hit record, and the other ones don't like it, so they're not using it. So from a business perspective, it becomes really difficult to find those efficiencies, because you've in effect got 3 different processes running at the same time. And on the other side of that, harking back to your comment earlier, Tom, is about where humans need to be involved in the process. And I heard an analogy recently, which I thought was really good, is that AI is in effect replacing the work, but you still need to set the work and then mark the homework. It's just removing that intellectual capital in the middle. Is that how you kind of see it?
Yeah, I think it's a good analogy, to be fair. I mean, it's similar to Kath and to what you're saying, Ben, around kind of adoption. Like we see exactly the same, and I think it's natural with tech, right? You have different personalities in advice firms. Some are very excited about technology. They, either they're kind of carrot or stick driven. Carrot is I just love tech. I want to get my hands on stuff. Stick is I just really hate doing meeting notes. I can please someone come and do this for me. So there's people that are really pushing at the forefront of firms, and then there's others that are slightly more cautious, let's say. Maybe it's a bit longer for them to pick up. And I think one of the things that really struck me when I first met you guys, which was up in a CISI event in Edinburgh, talking about kind of AI and processes, was that Saturn, Melo, and a lot of other firms are saying the same thing. And I think advice firms can listen to that kind of process first. Process is the core crux of everything that people should be doing. Technology and AI should not be part of a conversation until every person in a team can say, this is the process that we follow. It's documented, it's evidence, and everyone signs up to it. Because my assumption as to why you get poor adoption in advice firms is that the advisors don't necessarily agree to that process, or they don't necessarily, well, it hasn't been shared within their team. Everyone works slightly differently. And what the problem is within AI at the moment is that because the way that this software has been developed to be focused on meeting notes in isolation to begin with, and there's great reason for that, it's because the quality of data in the industry as we see it is not great. So therefore, transcription enables us to get very good data out of conversations. That makes sense. But the problem when it's just focused on meeting notes is that it's seen as an advisor tool. It's something that an advisor can pick up and an advisor can use to improve an advisor's notes. Whereas I think that's the wrong approach. I think actually the real benefactor of the notes being done is, yes, the advisor, it helps save them time. But actually, let's talk about paraplanners and administrators. How much value do they get out of a really clearly documented conversation, which is loaded with client facts, it's loaded with evidence of the advice that's being given. And when we phrase it like that, the advisors can think, okay, this isn't just about me not writing notes. This is about someone else in my team having a much better, enjoyable time of being able to produce the recommendation. And ultimately, all of that then positions it towards client experience. If we can produce letters in half the time we used to because the quality of the information is there to prevent any back and forth, now we have an ability for a team to get behind procedural change, and we don't see adoption failed at all. So like the ultimate crux of today's webinar, I really wanted to get across was that really it's processes, it's team buy-in, and then we can work on individual contributors.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sorry, Ben. I was just going to say, I totally agree with that. It's got to be process first, hasn't it? When I go into businesses and when we go in and look at the situation in businesses, what we see is often there's not someone in the building who really understands the tech. And actually, it's the processes. They think bolting tech onto their existing processes is what's going to fix everything. And it's really not like that at all. You need to understand what your process needs to look like and then look at using tech to support that rather than the other way around. And I totally agree with what you said, Tom, around, this is not just a tool for advisors. We talk about this a lot in the goals-based planning training that we do because it's about communicating the soft facts. It's about getting to clients' objectives. It's about understanding what makes them tick and what's driving their decision making. And for that, the note-taking part of AI is just hands down, better than a handwritten note that's written a week after the meeting happens, right? So the capture of information in that scenario is a much higher quality, and it allows, as you say, the people, when the file is being handed off, it allows the people that are dealing with it after that, like your paraplanners and your administrators, to understand the client as well as the advisor does. And that's got to be a great thing for the business, for the client experience, and for the teams working in the business as well, if everyone is on the same page.
Yeah, completely agree.
And it's that part about everyone being on the same page and the whole business. It's almost like a mindset shift to say we're going to become more systemized and process driven, and we're going to embrace this technology and see what it can do for us. I mean, we had a firm we were doing some work with who adopted, they actually adopted Saturn for meeting notes, and they had a real mental block of getting over what they did after the meeting notes came out, because the Saturn notes came out, and then they spent time changing those into a format that they used to use, and then pasting it into a Word document, which then went off to the paraplanning team to be fixed. And it was a real blocker to say, well, hang on a second, don't just kind of take that and then rework it and paste it. Just use that output. But that was really kind of a mindset change rather than a process. Well, it was a process change, but it was a mindset change around doing things differently rather than just bolting on to what they had previously.
100%. We see that quite a lot. And one of the things that we get asked consistently is, can you do custom meeting notes? And a lot of other providers in our space have done custom meeting notes. And for us, we have a real hesitation to do that for a number of reasons. One is that from an AI and a tech perspective, the ability for us as a firm to produce super accurate and reliable notes rests on us having really predictable outcomes and outputs. So if we start messing around with the outputs of Saturn on each individual firm having, their heading slightly different, it makes it really difficult for us to give the proposition and the service that we really want to. So like the accuracy and the reliability is something we always really push back on. The other point is, I would always challenge firms to say, why is this meeting note output so important to you? And having that discussion with firms, I think, is really powerful with everyone in a room. And it tends to be, well, because it's how we've done things and people are comfortable with it. And I think that plays a lot into that psychological point, Ben, of that people, I think, in our industry have got used to a certain speed of change and development based on tech providers delivering things a year late or whatever it's going to be. There's lots of factors that have gone into that. But we are now in an era where AI is evolving at an ever increasing rate. And we need to be able to start fostering cultures of change within our businesses. We need people to be really comfortable that the process we set today is likely not to be the process in 3 months and 6 months and 12 months time. It needs to be ever evolving and constantly changing. And therefore the focus should not necessarily be exclusively be on the process. It should also be on the people, and for the people to understand that process change is good. It means that we're evolving. It means we're developing. It's not a scary thing that we need to get behind. And for me, one of the big things I think is that everyone in the business needs to be involved. It can't just be senior leadership making a decision or someone in the advice team deciding they want to work with a certain provider. Administrators, paraplanners, office managers, everyone needs to be involved in this because it's really important, I think, for that to be a success.
Thanks, Tom, and thank you, Natalie, for your question. Well, more of a statement, really, that tech needs to help improve processes, and businesses need to understand the tech they have or wish to buy in as to how it will enhance and create efficiencies in their businesses. Couldn't agree more. It's all about understanding what the change is you're trying to make. And again, something that Kath and I see frequently is firms just stacking tech. They'll have like 15 systems which all cost them money, and none of them talk to each other, and they all kind of go over the edges of what each one does. So it's really important, I think, to have that clarity and understanding really around things.
Can I just say as well, coming back to your point that you made, Tom, about standardizing things and not customizing outputs and things for firms. We're in a situation now in the profession where we are contributing to these data governance standards now as firms, right? We are working on that as a profession. How do we move this forward in a way that works for everyone? It's not just about firm A needs this, firm B needs this. As a profession, we need to have these standards that are coming from within us as to what it all needs to look like. And I think that speaks to that point, what you were saying, Tom, about not customizing things too much, because what we really want as a profession and as an industry is standards, right? Is standards that we can all aspire to and try to achieve. And best practice is what we're trying to get to, right? So I think that's a very important point that you made there, Tom.
Cool. I appreciate that. And I think just for clarity as well, when I talk about that, about kind of custom outputs, I think it's really important to separate the internal process to the external client documentation, because what I think is really, really important is the incredibly personalized service that every firm I work with, and you guys will be the same, give to their clients. Like their individualism, their brands, their personalities is what makes that firm unique to other firms. So they shouldn't be seen as everyone has to do exactly the same thing, and we become this like boring, monotonous industry that just churns out the same stuff, regardless if you work with firm A or firm B. It's about behind the scenes, when the Wizard of Oz curtain is up and clients can see that, like, what does it look like behind the curtain? And that for us is about making incredibly streamlined processes. And what that's going to do is give capacity back to businesses to really think about that client experience. Because what I see a lot at the moment is that businesses don't have time to really think about the way that advice is delivered to their clients, because we're so busy documenting everything for the regulator and documenting the advice we have to give. Actually, if we can streamline that process, automate as much of that as we can, imagine the power that the human beings can have where they can really start to reimagine the proposition that clients get. And that for me is a really exciting future in advice.
I was at a round table actually recently, and there was a discussion around kind of technology and how it's changing the process. And the big output for me from that was that most people said that technology was allowing a more a deeper human connection than before. Because actually, if you think about your note taker, for example, you don't have to scribble notes the whole time when you're in a meeting. So you can make eye contact, you can really watch for micro expressions, try and dig to the root of kind of issues rather than having to scribble down loads of copious notes. And I love the
Yeah.
idea that it's that technology is making advice more human than ever before, rather than kind of dehumanizing it, which is what we kind of hear the scary stories about, isn't it? That AI is going to replace advisors. And in the future, who knows, right? But not for the time being.
Not for a long time, I think. I mean, I think, if I'm a client of an advice firm, if we think about what I experience right now, even with the best firms that we work with, they will sit down and they'll have an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour conversation with a client. And if you speak to clients, they love that. They love that human interaction. They love the fact the person in front of them is asking us about the grandkids and the holiday and having a cup of tea. Like, the problem with is there's not enough of that, because the advisor goes and collects the data, which tends to be, if you're using IO, 900 data fields in a fact finds, like, that's fun. They go and collect that data, and then they have to go and disappear off for 4 to 6 weeks at best, because it takes so long for that process to be completed. There's such a backlog of work in most advice businesses I speak to as well. A lot of it's stuck in kind of things like no change annual reviews. Whereas if you can free up that capacity for the team, hugely reduce the time it takes to deliver advice. Imagine a world where I go and see my client Kath on a Saturday, and next Saturday I come back in and say, here's all your work. Like, that is an incredible client experience. And maybe I can see you on a quarterly basis because actually I've got the time to go and do that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, advisors use AI and they have to triple or quadruple their client numbers. Some will, and there's firms that I'm speaking to that are super excited about that. But actually, a lot of businesses are thinking, how can I spend more time in front of clients? Consumer duty comes in, fair value. How do we give proper value to clients? Like, that, I think, is a really interesting way of exploring the impact of AI. And that makes it very specific to each business, right?
Just to chuck in a question that we've had sent in. This person, anonymous, has said, we tried AI for report writing from meeting recordings. So I assume that they're recording the meeting and using that to create the report. But it's taking our paraplanners as long to correct the report as it would be to write a new one from a template. When will this technology be fit for purpose?
Yeah, great question. I'll answer it very openly. I think, us in the AI world have tried to crack that problem for a long, long time in various different ways, and it's a very difficult problem to solve. My naivety from coming from a non-tech background was like, well, you've got the data in the note, so can't you just map it into there and then it's done? Um, Apparently not that easy. So there's a lot more work that goes into it on the branding, the customization, and the editing of the notes. We at Saturn have gone through 4 different iterations of getting to a point where we have a proposition we're really proud of. The first one was taking the kind of standard approach we see in the market today, which is chuck us your template, we'll build something for you, we'll give it back to your team, and your team can play around with it for a bit and let us know what you think. That tends to be how AI is being deployed in firms at the moment. There's a huge risk if that is not framed in the right way with businesses, because the person who's asked that question, they're saying that their team is spending a lot of time making edits and changes to that. If that project's been positioned that, guys, look, this is probably going to be 40, 50% of the way there, but the long-term ambition is to work together to get towards 70, 80% of the way there. If we can immediately half the time it takes to do your letters, that's great. But it is going to need a partnership for us to get there and collaborate and improve that. If that's been framed up front, then that guinea pig style approach we see a lot works well. The problem I see with that is that most businesses I speak with don't have the luxury to be messing around with trying and testing stuff. They need to just get on with it and do their job. So we made an important decision back in May to acquire ATEB Suitability, because for us, like, when we start to move from notes, which is an internal produced document, to a suitability letter, which is a regulatory required document, obviously compliance comes into the conversation now. It's a much more complex thing that needs to be done. We in the AI world don't have the compliance experience to be able to do a regulatory required document like suitability, but there are systems out there that can. So a system like ATIB suitability or Genovo that firms might be using, or paraplanning online, very, very good at creating templates for businesses, and it gives them a structure. It means that compliance is very much the focus. But again, speaking openly, I think the client experience from that is really poor. It takes a long, long time for people to have to go through, personalize, copy and paste stuff from Saturn or from handwritten notes or from someone else and move it into an output that they're proud to send to their client. We're the opposite end of that, right? We have all the personalization and none of the compliance. So the decision we've made is to buy ATIB and start to build their templates into our AI environment. And what that's making us do ultimately is produce a Saturn branded template for every firm we work with that follows our structure. Now, that creates another problem because we're having to kind of shift firms away from saying, well, this is our template, this is the way we do things, to actually, well, this is the way that we could do things in an AI environment. And that's a slightly different project than the person who's asked that question of, this is my template, I want to get it to a good level. But I don't think our role in the AI world is to just continue to do the same things we've done slightly quicker. I think our role is to challenge the way that things are done in the industry and to be able to provide alternative solutions for businesses to not focus on doing the same thing quicker and actually starting to do things maybe better. So that's kind of the transition that we've gone through, and hold our hands up. It's something we're learning all the time. Kath and I have worked on firms that use both Melo and Saturn, and some of those projects haven't gone very well. There's lots of stuff that we can take and learnings from that and move on to continue to get better, I suppose.
So I think that would be a great opportunity to probably dump into that a bit deeper now, to talk about maybe when things haven't gone so well and why they didn't go so well. But just first, quick reminder, if you do have a question, drop it in the Q&A and I'll make sure we get it voiced. But yeah, Kath, why don't we talk through, obviously no names, some of the firms where AI has maybe not gone as well as it could have done, and why that was.
Thanks, Ben. I think what we are seeing are firms where the expectation, I think, is that, as Tom said, that this is going to fix everything. This is an iterative process. It has to be fit into your business, right? So, and to make it fit for purpose. So we've seen issues like inconsistent adoption. Okay, inconsistent adoption. We've already mentioned that's a difficult one, because if some people are using it and other people aren't, and there's no consistent kind of feedback happening or addressing of issues as it goes along, people tend to put it down. So, they think, right, I can't be doing with that. I'll just put it down and I'll just go back to what I was doing before. So it's that persevering through that initial bit where it's always tricky trying to get your head around something new, isn't it? And it's just that sometimes some people are more persistent than others with that type of change. So inconsistent adoption is an issue. And also expectations. I think Tom was right to say that it's about framing those expectations at the front end. If you think that AI is going to come in and fix everything on day one, it's not. And actually, it's changing so quickly. This is why it's so important to have someone in the building who really understands it. And we've talked before about what an opportunity this is. I see personally this as a big opportunity for paraplanners. Be the person in the building who understands that tech really well, because that person is invaluable, right? In the business, if you understand the tech and you know how to deploy it and how to get the best out of it. I think also at times there is issues with, people are doing their business as usual job every day, and learning something new, it's almost like it works best, I think, if you kind of protect some time around that and have that set aside to tinker around with it and experiment and try and see how you get on. If you're expecting it to do the job that you want it to do on day one, it's not going to. So it's understanding what your own pain points, I think, are at the front end, and how you then go about addressing that. I was talking to somebody the other week, and we were saying, when you get a demo from an AI company, don't let them show you what they want to show you. Tell them to show you what you want to know and what you want to see. Are there particular pain points that you have in your processes? Is there clunkiness that you really, everyone is in agreement that it needs to, be dealt with? So that's where we come back again to understanding your processes, right? Because if you don't understand those, you don't actually know what you need the tech for. That's something that you really, really need to understand. Where are your pain points? And if you haven't mapped out your processes and you haven't looked at how things are being done and challenged that in a very kind of, let's almost try a clean slate here. In an ideal world, what would we want the process to look like? How much do we actually want the advisors involved in that process? Is that best use of their time? So I think at the front end, there's been, issues around expectation potentially of what can be achieved in time frame. And also businesses not really understanding why they need the tech. So that's the positioning all at the front end, isn't it? What do you need this tech to do? What are your pain points? Do you understand those? And then make the tech fit that rather than the other way around.
I think I would definitely advocate having a person within the business who owns that tech implementation, and they are thinking about it every day, that they carve out specific time to work on that tech implementation. A few businesses will have the luxury of having a full-time project manager within them. So it's likely to be one of the team that will be doing it. But the issue is where everyone's accountable, no one's accountable. So if you have one person running that project, I think that can really keep the focus on there and push it forward. You talked about paraplanners, Kath, and it would be remiss not to chuck in a question that did come through earlier on, which I thought was fun. Paraplanners are getting expensive. How long before AI can do it? Tom?
Thanks, Ben. I think actually I agree with Kath. I think paraplanners can be the biggest winner in this AI evolution. I talked at a conference a few weeks ago, which was exclusively for paraplanners and administrators and operations people within our industry. And there was a real sense of nervousness and anxiety in the room when AI came up. And I think it's framed in a way that is, AI is going to come and take my job. But I think fundamentally, if we look at what the role of a paraplanner should be, I don't think AI is going to replace that. I think if we think as paraplanners being, the incredible technical resources that most advisors fundamentally need behind them for that work to be done really effectively, that emotional intelligence, understanding that logic and thinking, I don't think is going to be replaced by AI for a very, very long time, because it's about trust. It's about having the skill set in our industry to be able to deliver on that. The other side of that is I think paraplanner is a very loose term that's defined in various different ways within businesses. And sometimes I see businesses where a paraplanner is just manually putting data in a CRM system and they are, report writing for most of their time. Those are things that AI is already starting to replace. So I don't think the role of a paraplanner is going to become replaced or redundant, because actually I think the technical role of a paraplanner is fundamentally important to the success of a business. I think if you're using paraplanners in ways to do the machine work within your business, that job will go in terms of the activities, but actually I think that will free up capacity for that human to be used in more technical ways. So I suppose it's maybe a slight deflection as an answer, but I think it depends on what you define as a paraplanner. It depends on where those paraplanners want to be focused, and it depends on what that business owner wants to use that resource for.
It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because in my mind, there's no doubt that AI makes people more efficient in their operations. So from what you said there, I agree with some of it, I think, around that it can't replace the role of a traditional paraplanner as of now. But I do think that, if you get a paraplanner or somebody in that kind of role as chief technology person within a business, they could probably do the output of 6 people if they effectively used AI. So we might see less people being required, and therefore is it more important that you become the person who knows how to pull the levers? Is that the best way to kind of project your job for the future?
Yeah, I mean, something I'm working on personally at the moment is trying to imagine what an AI empowered paraplanner looks like. So doing quite a lot of thinking and discussion with paraplanners about parts of their job they love, parts of the job that the businesses really values, stuff they don't like. Like, I think if we can create this idea of what an AI empowered paraplanner could be, that might start to give some clarity in the industry. So it's a bit of a side project for me at the moment. But I think my view is that advice businesses have had to follow these fairly rigid kind of pyramid structures most of the time, which means that an advisor is supported by a paraplanner and some administrators. And that means that it's difficult for advice businesses to scale. So a lot of the time scale has come from acquisitions, mergers, buying up existing team members to enable that revenue to be increased. I actually think there's an opportunity with AI to keep the current paraplanning support team as they are, but enable that advisor to paraplanner ratio to increase. And maybe we can have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 advisors per paraplanner. If that paraplanner is AI enabled and empowered, so any data they need, any information is immediately fed into them. We're not waiting for providers to send us information through LOA processes. That is immediately available to them. Like, if we can think about that future role of a paraplanner, I think it becomes a much more exciting future.
So
Yeah, as you said, Tom, the role of a paraplanner varies so much from business to business, right? So I've seen paraplanners who are called paraplanners, but they're really administrators who are doing a bit of report writing. And I've seen paraplanners that are highly, highly technical and everything in between. I would say, and this might be a controversial opinion, but we did say we were going to say our opinion.
A risk warning, yeah.
So, but I think coming back to the client facing piece, I see increasingly more and more paraplanners becoming a bit more client facing. So maybe it's that slant towards the personalized bit again, that is where people can add value. I know client facing paraplanners who do absolutely everything except give advice. They deal with all incoming client queries, because they have built their own relationships. And if we're saying this is becoming a relationship piece is where we add the value, there's also that to consider as well on the paraplanning side. But I think there's actually opportunity for paraplanners here in terms of, like you said, Ben, becoming that person in the building who understands the tech, or, moving into a more client-facing paraplanner role, where it's actually about people handling and those skills that are still going to be required, that you can't press a button on AI and spit something out with. So yeah,
you raise an interesting point there, Kath, in that I've personally now seen in a couple of firms the model changing of how the client interacts with the firm. And some have gone further than others, but I've seen relationship manager roles now becoming more frequent in businesses, where their job is just to talk to the client in between the advice events. I know of one firm where the advisor acts almost like a dispensing chemist. Everything is done by somebody else. They just squiggle at the end to say that they approve. So we are now starting to see kind of different models come through. We can probably answer two questions in one here that came through. AI is moving so fast. How do we know which staff to hire and what they'll be doing by the time they come on board? And another question around that is, we're seeing so many different advice providers. How do we know who to pick? Obviously, you're a little bit biased, Tom, but what do you think? Where should people be looking at hiring staff, and should they be waiting to find out what happens next with AI, or just kind of make a play now and see what happens?
I think controversially, don't think about AI and AI providers at all until you've got to a point, and employing staff as well, until you've got to a point where you fundamentally understand what you want your client experience to be. And if you're a business that wants customer relationship managers to have regular touch points with clients, you want the advisors to be behind the scenes, you want paraplanners doing certain things, like, these are all things that you're going to need to find certain people to go and do, because there will be people that come with their own assumptions to what that role is going to be. So if you as a business owner can really clearly identify exactly what that client experience is, then you can go and find the people to be able to do that. Once you found the people to be able to do that, you can understand their skill sets, their strengths, their weaknesses, and then you can find technology and processes that can fill in the gaps around their weaknesses to make them the best that they can be. Only at that point, I think you should start talking to AI providers like us. And I can go off and waffle on why I think Saturn are the best, but there's probably not adding much value. But I think once those things have been done, then having conversation with the AI providers to say, look, this is what I want to be able to do for my clients. Can you help me with that? Is a much better question than what can you do for me?
And just to be controversial as well, we have seen this kind of explode as an industry. These kind of AI providers, or standalone, I would say, AI providers. We started with one. I think there's about 20 firms now listed as being financial services specific AI tech providers. How long before it just becomes part of everything normally. I mean, I remember, I'm old enough to remember, on my iPhone when you had to download a separate app called SwiftKey, which enabled you to kind of swipe your finger across and it knew what you were saying. So SwiftKey was like the biggest download on iOS for ages. And then the next version of the Apple software, it was just built in. And SwiftKey disappeared instantly. I mean, we're talking about IO have got a planned integration coming up with, I think it's Multiply. We're seeing some of the other big, kind of bigger providers back office start to have in-depth conversations with providers. Are we going to see some contraction?
Massively so. And I think what we're starting to see is this shift away from what historically tech has solved in our advice industry, which is point solutions. It's incredible. If you look at the way most advice firms are set up, Dimension did a research piece into this. They said the average advice firm uses 10.7 pieces of tech. And it's because most firms have had to do that to be able to deliver the processes they want. You know, they've had a CRM system, and I won't pick on anyone, but they've had a CRM system. They don't like the portal that CRM system does. So they say, great, well, let's go use Money Info because it's a great proposition. That's two. We don't like the cash flow system that my CRM does or something else. So we're going to go work with Cash Calc or Voya. Well, there's three. We don't like the risk profiling that one of these systems does. So we'll work with Dynamic Planner. There's four. And over time, we're building more and more fragmented data, which is making it harder and harder for our team to provide a really slick advice process. What I think we're starting to see is that the industry, the world is moving away from these point solutions into solutions that can do everything. And I think actually what businesses should think about is not which tech provider can do this for me, but what do I want my tech setup to be in my business? I think my personal opinion is that we're going to see a huge consolidation of tech providers, and we're going to see businesses have two tech solutions, not 11. Those two tech solutions will do one of two things. One will be a highly secure data storage facility where all of my client data will be centralized, not fragmented across 11 systems, all centralized into one single hub. And that could be with a system like IO, it could be with Xplan, it could be with Curo, it could be with, more likely, AWS or Amazon AWS, what's the other one? Anyway, SharePoint, cloud, whatever. Like one of those systems that's super easy for firms to have access to their data and is really easy for people to integrate into. And then above that, you will have an app operating system which will enable your team to do their work. And that will be a system like what we're building, like at Saturn. So for us, we want to focus on building an end-to-end integrated advice process through Saturn, which can connect into client data and move the industry away from individual tactical solutions, which are making the problem worse, ultimately.
Thanks, Tom. And I think I would, my personal view on this is don't wait. AI is going to become part of everything that we do. So if you choose a provider now and then there is some consolidation, I think it's much easier if you're an AI-enabled business to move to a different provider than it is just sitting in the background and waiting to see how the land lies in the next few years. You'll miss out on so many growth opportunities. We had a
Just to add a
question.
point, just
Oh,
to add a
sorry.
point on that, Ben, I think Kath mentioned about kind of what makes AI implementation successful, and to not go to the AI provider and get them to demo a system to you, but to actually ask them what you want. A question I would really ask them is, what do you see the future of technology looking like? And making sure that that aligns to you as a business. You know, if you have strategic alignment between you as a company and the providers you're working with, you can build that future together. But the problem that I think I've seen a lot in our industry is that people start to use a tech provider, their view of the future changes and diverges to the point where that tech solution no longer works. You know, we won't talk about the dreaded R word, roadmap, but people start to talk about things, they don't deliver on it, they go a different direction, that causes a lot of friction. If you can really gain clarity from the tech providers you're speaking to as to exactly what they think the future of the industry looks like, you can align with that and then you can partner.
I would also say, Tom, that coming back to your point about, all of these different tech pieces, I think the starting point for many firms needs to be what they're doing with their CRM. So I go into a lot of businesses and I see businesses who don't say we don't like our CRM, and my question is, do you not like it because it doesn't work, or is there no one in the building who understands it, right? So if you've got one point of data entry and the data is clean, because that's really important as well, you can then look at what you can do to support that. And maybe it's not that CRM that you need, maybe it's something else, but you're not going to know that until you really understand the capabilities of whatever CRM it is you're using at the moment. And that, I think, needs to be a starting point for many firms when they're thinking about this. It's how are we using our CRM, because lots of firms aren't using them adequate. They're not using them to 1/10 of their capability often. How are we using it? What are we trying to achieve with it? How do we get this one source of data truth that feeds into other things that we're using? So yeah, I think that's a very important point you made there, Tom.
Thanks both. We've had a question come in from Chris. How are advisors asking for permission to record each meeting with their clients? Kath?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, in the meeting, often if it's on a Teams call, it's a lot easier, isn't it? It's like my note taker is here, is that okay? Yes or no? Often with these types of tech, if you're doing a face-to-face meeting with someone, it's putting it in the middle of the table, isn't it? And actually, a good way of positioning this with clients, and you will find that advisor bias comes into this, right? So if the advisor doesn't see the value in it, the client's not going to see the value in it, right? So positioning this with a client, I would be approaching it from, this is adding value to both of us, actually. It's going to give us a very clear summary of what we spoke about in the meeting. It's going to make for a more meaningful discussion. And actually, it means that I can focus on you and what you're saying to me and not be sitting scribbling notes and not making eye contact with you for the whole meeting. It allows me to be more present in the meeting as an advisor. It allows me to be more engaged, and it's going to allow me to give you a really, really clear summary of what we've spoken about. And clients often, when they see the summaries, are like, wow, I'd actually forgotten we spoke about that. I'd forgotten we spoke about that. So I think positioning it as an advisor, you have to be talking about the value it's bringing them, not just the value it's bringing you as a firm.
I think having that transcript go out straight after the meeting, I've heard that clients have fed back very positively about that, because it's then set in stone. This is the record of the meeting. It has a nice summary if you're using an AI provider, a nice summary to clients to refer back to. But yeah, I think it's like anything really, Chris. The more you ask, the easier it gets. So the first one might be a little bit awkward, but ultimately, as Kath said, I use a AI note taker because it means I can focus on you rather than recording notes. Is that okay? Most clients will be fine to go ahead with that, I would think.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add on that as well is I think giving clients advanced warning is nice. And I think when you get to a client meeting and you put your phone on the table and say, right, Ben, I'm going to record today's conversation, as much as it's like good to position it as a benefit for you and for them, sometimes they're a bit like, oh, it's not really what I thought. So I think actually, when you send that meeting invitation out to the client, I just put some wording in there, literally verbatim what Kath said. I think is perfect. And these are the reasons why we use it. It's for you, it's for us. It gives us accountability. We can focus on the conversation. I think is really, really powerful. I also think letting clients know that this is a tool that can be paused, it can be stopped. It's not about kind of Big Brother being in the room with you. It's about ensuring that it's a fair reflection of the meeting there. So there are going to be circumstances where clients think, do you know what, Kath, like I'd prefer to say this on record. It's something that's maybe, my family don't know or something, they're a bit cautious of it. Making sure you know how to stop recordings, pause things, pick things up is all part of kind of advisors really understanding how the tool works.
And it comes back again to interrogating it before it goes out. So, if you're going to send it out straight after a meeting, make sure that you're happy that it says what you think it's going to say, and make sure that you've checked the output before you're sending it to someone. Because if there is anything in there that's contentious or whatever, you can take it out and take it out of the notes and just make sure that you're happy that it's captured everything. And you can add things in if there's bits that you think, actually, I need to make that comment, or there was that we spoke about. So yeah, it's really important to make sure you're happy with the outputs before you send them anywhere.
Good point there, Kath. You can, with I think all the tools that I've seen, go in and edit the notes before they go out afterwards. So it's not like that is what it is. You have got the ability to go in and change things. So we've only got a few minutes left. I could talk on this subject for a long time, but I'd like to rattle through a couple of quick fire questions if that's all right, guys. Question that came in: I'm planning to sell my business in 3 to 4 years. Do I need to bother with AI, or should I leave it for whoever buys my business? What do we think, Kath?
Well, I would say if you've got a 3 to 5 year timeline, you've got the time to embed some efficiencies, haven't you? And actually, a business that is easy to run is easy to sell, as we know, right? So if you can get it all humming, it's actually going to be to your benefit from an acquisition point of view. A buyer is going to look for efficiencies. They don't want to see extra headcount if you don't need, extra bodies in there. So the more efficient you can make your business before you go to market, I would say do it. You've got the time frame there to allow you to be able to make some efficiency gains and have the benefit of that as you approach market. If it was a 12-month time frame, bit more tricky, but the longer your time frame, the more chance you have to be able to make changes and embed them successfully, and that can definitely have an impact on your valuation when it comes to time to sell.
Thank you, Kath. Tom, how do you convince a skeptical director that AI isn't a fad?
Test it. I think there's a lot of noise around AI, right? There's a lot of internal industry noise, external noise going on around what AI is, what it can do. I think it's probably quite overwhelming. I mean, I find it quite overwhelming, to be honest, sticking to a lot of our engineers and what they're doing. But I think if you're in a business and trying to understand what it can do, it can be quite overwhelming. I think having a clear plan as to what that business wants to do and why, and then letting the team test it to evidence that is really important. A lot of the deals that we've worked on to partner up with firms have started with a smaller group of the business thinking this is the way we want to go, getting sign off from the board to say, look, if we can deliver X, Y, Z using this system, does that make sense to move forward? If the answer is yes, and we can deliver that, then there's no real pushback. I think my ultimate view is that very quickly we're going to stop talking about AI altogether. And that might be quite a controversial point for an AI provider to say, but I think AI is going to be so embedded into everything that we do and touch and feel that we will no longer mention artificial intelligence. It will be assumed. So therefore, if people are reluctant about AI, it's almost like, well, what are you reluctant about? Because this change is happening and it's coming very quickly. So make sure you're comfortable with it and make sure you understand where it can impact you. And I think most directors are comfortable with those outcomes.
Does feel like almost like the dawn of the internet. When the internet first came out, for those of us old enough to remember that, it was like the internet, and then now it's just Google it. It's just a thing.
Exactly.
It's just there, isn't it? And I agree with you, Tom. I think that AI will just become part of everything that we do, kind of automatically.
Yeah, I think businesses need to think like that as well, because I mean, a lot of the problems I see in companies where the implementation doesn't go very well is they try and do the same thing quicker. And I've said that a couple of times, but I think it's a really key point. Like Henry Ford's quote, right? If I listened to people, I'd have built faster horses. Like that's what a lot of businesses are trying to do. He didn't, he built a car. Like this is an opportunity for businesses to completely rethink their processes and use AI to get them there.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. And that's about all we have time for today. Thank you ever so much to Tom and for Kath for sharing their wisdom today. If you do want to think about moving to motor cars from horses, then do feel free to get in touch with either of us. There'll be a survey after the webinar is finished. If you want to talk to Tom about Saturn, or you want to talk to Kath or I about how to implement AI into your business, just drop your contact details in the chat and we will be in touch. You will get an email later on today, which has a copy of the recording of this video. So do feel free, as I said earlier, to share it with anyone who you think should see it. And we're going to include a special bonus, which is our Melo guide to approaching AI in financial planning. Give you some tips and tricks on how to get the best out of it from your business. The next webinar we have available is on the 24th of November at 12 o'clock, and that is selling a business when you have exposure to DB. So thank you again for your time today. Yeah, don't be scared of AI. It's here to stay, embrace it, but just really think about what you want it to do, not what it can do. Thanks, everybody.